everybody. My name is Alexa. I'm from the Cannon Falls Library, and I want to welcome you to our next installment in One More Chapter, where we read chapters from various books. And this month we are reading Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, written by Lewis Carroll. And today we will be reading Chapter 4. The Rabbit Sends in a Little Bill. It was the White Rabbit, trotting slowly back again and looking anxiously as it went, as if it had lost something, and she heard it muttering to itself, the Duchess, oh my dear paws, oh my fur, oh my whiskers, she'll get me executed for sure, as ferrets are ferrets. Where can I have dropped them, I wonder?" Alice guessed in a moment that it was looking for the fan and the pair of white kid gloves, and she was very good-naturedly began hunting about for them. But they were nowhere to be seen. Everything seemed to have changed since her swim in the pool, and the great hall with the glass table and the little door had vanished completely. Very soon the rabbit noticed Alice as she was hunting about and called to her in an angry tone, "Why, Mary Ann, what are you doing out here? Run home this moment and fetch me a pair of gloves and a fan. Quick now!" Alice was so frightened that she ran off at once in the direction it pointed without trying to explain the mistake it had made. "He took me for a housemaid," she said to herself as she ran. "How surprised he'll be when he finds out who I am. But I better make him his fan and gloves, that is, if I can find them." As she said this, she came upon a neat little house with a door on the door of which was a bright brass plate with the name W. Rabbit engraved on it. She went in without knocking and hurried upstairs in great fear lest she should meet the real Mary Ann and be turned out of the house before she found the fan and gloves. "How queer it seems," Alice said to herself, "to be going messages for a rabbit. I suppose Dinah will be sending me on messages next, and she'll be fancying the sort of thing that would happen. Miss Alice, please come directly and get ready for your walk." "Coming in a minute, nurse. But I've got to go watch this mouse hole till Dinah comes back, and I see that the mouse hasn't gotten out." "Now I can only think," Alice went on, "that I'd let Dinah stop in the house if it began ordering people like that." By this time, she had found her way to a tidy little room with a table in the window, and on it she had hoped a fan and 2 or 3 pairs of white kid gloves. She took up the fan and a pair of gloves and was just going to leave the room when her eyes fell upon a little bottle that stood near the looking-glass. There was no label on it this time with the words "Drink Me," but nevertheless she uncorked it and put it to her lips. "I know something interesting is sure to happen," she said to herself, "whenever I eat or drink anything, so I'll just see what this bottle does. I do hope it'll make me grow larger again, for really I'm quite tired of being such a tiny little thing." It did so indeed, and much sooner than she had expected. Before she had drunk half the bottle, she found her head pressing against the ceiling, and had to stop to save her neck from being broken. She hastily put down the bottle, saying to herself, "That's quite enough. I hope I shan't grow any more. As it is, I can't get out of the door. I do wish I hadn't drunk quite so much." Alas, it was too late to wish that. She had grown, and very soon had to kneel down on the floor. In another minute there was no room even for this, and she tried the effect of lying down with one elbow against the door, the other arm curled up around her head. Still, she went on growing, and as a last resort she put one arm out the window and one up the chimney, and said to herself, "Now I can do no more. Whatever happens, what will become of me?" Luckily for Alice, the little magic bottle had now had its full effect, and she grew no larger. Still, it was very uncomfortable, and there seemed to be no sort of chance of her getting out of the room again. No wonder she felt unhappy. It was much pleasanter at home, thought poor Alice, when one wasn't always growing larger and smaller and being ordered about by mice and rabbits. "I almost wish I hadn't gone down the rabbit hole, and yet it's rather curious, this sort of life. I do wonder what can have happened to me. When I used to read fairy tales and I fancied the king of things never happened. And I fancied that kind of thing never happened. And now here I am in the middle of one. There ought to be a book written about me. There ought. And when I grow up, I'll write one. But I'm grown up now, and," she added in a sorrowful tone, At least there's no room for me to grow any more here. But then, thought Alice, shall I never get any older than I am now? That'll be a comfort one way, never to be an old woman, but then always to have lessons to learn? Oh, I shouldn't like that. Oh, you foolish Alice, she answered herself. How can you learn lessons in here? Why, there's hardly room for you and no room for any lesson books. And so she went on talking, one side first, then the other, and making quite a conversation of it all together. But a few minutes later she heard a voice outside and stopped to listen. Marianne, Marianne, said the voice, fetch me my gloves this moment. Then came a little pattering of feet on the stairs, and Alice knew it was the rabbit coming to look for her, and she trembled till she shook the house, quite forgetting that she was now about 1,000 times as large as the rabbit and had no reason to be afraid. Presently the rabbit came up to the door and tried to open it, but as the door opened inwards and Alice's elbow was pressed hard against it, that attempt proved a failure. Alice heard it say to itself, "Then I'll go around and get in the window." "That you won't," thought Alice, and after waiting till she fancied she heard the rabbit just under the window, she suddenly spread out her hand and made a snatch in the air. She did not get a hold of anything, but she heard a little shriek and a fall and a crash of broken glass, from which she concurred that it had just possibly had fallen into a cucumber frame, or something of the sort. Next, an angry voice, the rabbit's, "Pat, Pat, where are you?" And then a voice she had never heard before. "Sure then I'm here digging for apples, your honor." "Digging for apples, indeed," said the rabbit angrily. Here, come here and help me out of this." Sounds of more broken glass. "Now, sure tell me, Pat, that's your window." "Sure is an arm, your honor," he pronounced it. "Arm. An arm, you goose. Whoever saw one that size? Why, it fills the whole window." "Sure it does, your honor, but it's an arm for all that." "Well, it's got no business there, for any rate. Go and take it away." There was a long silence after this, and Alice could only hear whispers, and then such as, "Sure, I don't like it, your honor, that's all, that's all." "Do as I tell you, you coward." And then at last she spread out her hand again and made another snatch at the air. This time there were 2 little shrieks and more sounds of broken glass. "What a number of cucumber frames there must be," thought Alice. "I wonder what they'll do next. As for me pulling out the window, I only wish I could. I'm sure I don't want to stay in here any longer." She waited for some time without hearing anything more. At last came a rumbling of a little wheel cart and the sound of a good many voices all talking together as she made out the words. "Where's the other ladder? Why, I had to bring one, but Bill's got the other. Bill, fetch it. Where is that lad? Put it in the corner. No, time together first. It'll reach half high enough yet. Oh, we'll do enough. Oh, don't be particular. Here, Bill, catch hold of this and wrap it. Oh, the roof. I'll bear the roof. Mind the loose slate. Oh, it's coming. Head below. Now, who did that? Bill. Bill, gotta get down here. The master wants to know what's in the chimney." "Oh, so Bill's got to come down the chimney, has he?" said Alice to herself. "Why, they seem to be putting everything upon Bill. I wouldn't want to be Bill's place for a good deal. This fireplace is narrow, to be sure, but I think I can kick a little bit." She drew her foot as far down the chimney as she could and waited till she heard a little animal. She couldn't guess what sort of it was, scratching and scrambling about in the chimney above her. Then, saying to herself, "This is Bill," she gave one sharp kick and waited to see what would happen next. The first thing she heard was a general chorus of, "There goes Bill!" Then the rabbit's voice alone, "Catch him! You by the hedge!" Then silence. Then another confusion of voices. "Hold up his head! Brandy now, don't choke him! Oh, how is the fellow? What happened? Tell me all about it!" Last came a little feeble squeaking voice. "That's Bill," thought Alice. "Well, I hardly know. No more, he thinks. I'm a deal too flustered to tell you all. I know it. Something comes at me like a jack-in-the-box, and I go up in the sky like a rocket." "So you did, fellow," said the others. "We must burn the house down," said the rabbit's voice, and Alice called out loudly as she could, "If you do, I'll send Dinah at you." There was a dead silence instantly, and Alice thought to herself, "I wonder what they will do. If they had any sense, they'd take the roof off." After a minute or two, they began moving about again, and Alice heard the rabbit say, "A barrow fill." A barrowful of what? Thought Alice. But she had not long to doubt, for the next moment a shower of little pebbles came rattling at the window, and some of them hit her in the face. I'll put a stop to this, she said to herself, and shouted, You better not do that again, which produced another dead silence. Alice noticed with some surprise that the pebbles were all turning into little cakes as they landed on the floor, and a bright idea came into her mind. If I eat one of these cakes, she thought, I'm sure to make some change in my size, and it can't possibly make me larger. It must make me smaller, I suppose. So she swallowed one of the cakes, and was delighted to find that she began to shrinking directly. As soon as she was small enough to get through the door, she ran out of the house and found quite a large crowd of little animals and birds waiting outside. And poor little lizard Bill was in the middle, being held up by 2 guinea pigs who were giving it something out of a bottle. They all made a rush at Alice the moment she appeared, but she ran off as hard as she could and found herself safe in a thick wood. The first thing I've got to do, said Alice to herself as she wandered into the woods, is to grow to my right size again, and the second thing is to find my way to that lovely garden. I think that will be the best plan. It sounded an excellent plan, no doubt, and very neat and simply arranged, and the only difficulty was that she had not the smallest idea how to set about it. And while she was peering about anxiously among the trees, a sharp little bark just over her head made her look up in a great hurry. An enormous puppy was looking down on her with large round eyes, and feebly stretched out one paw, trying to touch her. Poor little thing, said Alice in a coaxing tone as she tried hard to whistle to it, but she was terribly frightened all the time at the thought that it might be hungry, in which case it would be very likely to eat her up in spite of her coaxing. Hardly knowing what she did, she picked up a little bit of stick and held it out to the puppy, whereupon the puppy jumped into the air, all of its feet at once, with a yelp of delight, and rushed at the stick, and made believe to worry it. Then Alice dodged behind a great thistle to keep herself from being run over, and the moment she appeared on the other side, the puppy made another rush at the stick, and tumbled over head over heels in a hurry to get hold of it. Then Alice, thinking it was very likely having a game of play with a cart horse, and expecting every moment to be trampled under its feet, ran round the thistle again. Then the puppy began a series of short charges at the stick, running a very little ways forwards each time and a long way back, and barking hoarsely all the way, till at last it sat down with a good way off, panting, with its tongue hanging out of its mouth and its great eyes half shut. This seemed to Alice a good opportunity for making her escape, so she set forth at once, and ran till she was quite tired and out of breath, until the puppy's barking sounds quite faint in the distance. And yet what a dear little puppy it was, said Alice as she leaned against a buttercup to rest herself and fanned herself with one of the leaves. I should have liked teaching it tricks very much, but if I'd only been the right size to do it. Oh dear, I've nearly forgotten that I've grown up again. Let me see, how is this to be managed? I suppose I ought to drink or eat something other. But the great question is, what? The great question certainly was, what? Alice looked around her at the flowers and the blades of grass, but she could not see anything that looked like the right thing to eat or drink under the circumstances. There was a large mushroom going near her, about the same height as herself, and when she looked under it and on both sides of it and behind it, it occurred to her that she might as well look to see what was on top of it. She stretched herself up on tiptoes and peeped over the top of the mushroom, and her eyes immediately met those of a large blue caterpillar that were sitting on the top, with its arms folded, quietly smoking a long hookah, and taking not the smallest notice of her or anything else. That is the end of Chapter 4. I want to thank you all for joining me today. I hope you had a great time, and we will see you at the library. Bye!